Hi, this is Susan from Hotshot Polka Dot. In this video, I will give you specific instructions showing how I make shoes, boots, and accessories. You will need a sewing kit, fabric, sewing machine or hand sew, and my super easy pattern listed on Etsy. And you will need a doll. Here we go. Today I'll show you how to make my shoe pattern that's listed on Etsy. Give you easy instructions. I'm a visual learner, so I have to have lots of photographs or videos. Anyway, you can do the high cut shoe or the lower cut shoe. I also have the boot listed, and this is the easiest boot that you will make. And stay tuned to the very end, and I'll show you how to make this two-tone shoe. My goal is always to show you the easiest way to make doll clothes. Hopefully simple enough for a beginner. I have a pattern on Etsy for shoes and boots, and I just take my pattern and trace it on the lining. I find that an easy way to start. The instructions show to sew the red part first. You'll notice that I sewed right on the pencil line, and I also put the lining on the right side of the fabric. You can see that I cut right on the pencil line, and I cut a little less than 1/4 of an inch away from the stitches. Be sure to clip the curve. That'll keep your shoe from puckering. Turn to the right side and give it a good press with your iron. I like kind of a tight shoe so it'll stay on while your child's playing with it. Cut about a 4-inch ribbon, and that'll help you tug the shoe on. I folded my ribbon and sewed it on with my favorite decorative stitch. I pressed the raw edges under, and I've seen lots of other ways to do this, but it's my favorite way. And then I'm going to just sew a straight stitch right there. And there's the back of the shoe closed. Stitch about 1/8 of an inch all the way around to keep the lining and the top of the fabric together. I choose to use just plain playing cards as my inner sole, and I have glued the pattern onto some heavy cardboard, so it makes it easier to trace. And I just cut it out. And meanwhile, I've been heating my glue gun, and I'll show you what I do next. I've matched the front of the shoe with the front of the inner sole, and you'll see that little stitch that I made all the way around is helpful when I align my fabric to the inner sole. I go just above that 1/8 of an inch stitch. Alright, I'm gluing the front first, then the back, and let me get that glued. A little bit harder to do on camera. And I'll put a little glue here. And I will try and get these little corners as smooth as I can. I'll try that off camera, make sure I get it smooth. Alright, I got that pretty smooth. Sometimes you do have to cut off a little bit of the bulk but that looks pretty good. Now remember, that's the inner sew. I'm going to cover this, but that looks pretty good inside. Let's see if I can get some light on it. I found this placemat at Dollar Store, and I'm going to use that as the outer sole. And it's kind of flat, so if you want to, you can glue foam together, fold it, and then cut that out. I'll kind of fast forward on that step. I've also found thicker placemats at other stores, and that looks really neat on the bottom of a shoe. I'm using hot glue to glue the outer sole to the shoe, and I did put two pieces of foam on here. So I'll just start with the middle and line it up best I can. And then finish gluing the inner parts. If a little bit of the glue oozes out, it's okay, because you're going to take a strip of the placemat and put that around the shoe to cover all of that up. I'll do that. Okay, here's the shoe on the doll, and I like a pretty high shoe, especially if I'm going to attach a boot to it. And you'll see that it's on there pretty snug. And I do have to use my little ribbon in the back to pull it on. But I'll make another shoe and make it not quite as high as this shoe. To make a lower cut shoe, you just simply sew mine's about 3/8 away from the pattern's curve. And I cut it out and clip the seams and use the previous instructions to put this little shoe together. Okay, so here she is with the lower cut shoe on this one, and the higher cut shoe on this one. By the way, I find my fabric for shoes, not just the fabric store, but Dollar Tree. I recycle clothes. This is a napkin that I found at Goodwill. Here are two more unconventional materials to use for shoes. I've seen people use duct tape, and I'll show you my version of duct tape shoes in another video. And I made these boots out of upholstery fabric, and I'll show you how I did that. It's really nice for doll boots. I've experimented with lots of different patterns for boots, but this one is probably the easiest one that I can show you. This version does not have to be lined unless your fabric's really thin, but this is middleweight type fabric. Again, you use your pattern to draw around. I used chalk on the wrong side of the fabric. I also kind of went with the grain. The next step is to make a stay stitch about 1/4 of an inch down from the curved part. And I haven't sewn anything together, I just made the stitch. And you also make a stay stitch on the strips of fabric. I've clipped all the curves, and I also I've also clipped the straight part too, up to where you did the stay stitching. Put right sides together and then pin and sew right under the stitches. It doesn't hurt to cut away some of the bulk of the fabric. While the fabric is flat, this is a good time to sew on the Velcro. One goes on the inside of the fabric and one on the outside of the fabric. Okay, I am going to sew. I've overlapped it, and I'm going to sew a stitch right along the bottom part of the shoe, and the Velcro will hold the top together. This fabric does fray, but I'm not folding it down. I just think it would be too bulky. So I will use fray check and just put it on all the exposed edges where it could ravel. To finish the boot, I used foam board and some felt as the outer sole of the shoe. And here's the finished boot. Here's the Velcro closure. And it's a good fit. I could accessorize it with ribbon or chains. Use your imagination, and that was super easy. And the last shoe that I was going to show you is the two-tone shoe. All you have to do is sew two pieces of fabric together and then just place your pattern where you want it to be two-tone. And here's another example of the two-tone. This is the last video in the Mix and Match series, and I have two accessories I wanted to show you. This is the belt, and sometimes I used it as her hairband, but it's just a strip of fabric about 2.5 inches, and you measure around the doll. And I just folded it, and to make it even easier, I finished off the edge and then gave it 2 rows of top stitching. Grab a ponytail tie and double it and sew it onto your belt. The infinity or t-shirt, scarf, whatever you want to call that, is just a piece of knit fabric stretched, and it curls on its own. And then you can see that I tied a knot, and I made it 3 different lengths. And then I sewed, just to make it nice at the top, I just sewed a piece of fabric to hide the seams. Thanks for watching.